Hey gang, how is everybody? Happy Tuesday. What a crazy week already. A great week though. I am really struggling with something today and I'm curious to know if you guys share the same struggle, if you have any advice for how to get through the struggle. It's been a weird vibe lately and it's this. I moved to Florida. I love living in Florida. It's been a wonderful surprise. Miami is beautiful. Everybody is so nice. Everybody is so accepting and welcoming you with open arms. But the summer is kind of like the winter here because of hurricane season. And every single day there is really insane rain where like the entire heavens and earth opens up and just dumps rain. And there's such bad lightning and thunder that I feel like the building is going to get struck by lightning, which it almost did today, which is really crazy. And it's just a weird vibe. And then it's gloomy and cloudy like all the rest of the day. And it's supposed to be like this. I guess hurricane season lasts all the way through November, which nobody warned me about that. I'm a sunshine girl, so I'm a little struggling with the clouds. And I know it's something that I need to adjust to and get used to before I move to Alaska someday very soon. That seems to be approaching in the very soon future, more and more with each passing day of insanity on this on the face of this planet. But I never expected it was going to be this cloudy and gloomy in Florida. Apparently this is an East Coast thing, and I kind of remember this from living in Washington, D.C., but also not. Like, I lived in D.C. for a long time, and there were a lot of sunny days, even when it was cold. So, I don't know, maybe it helped that I was more inland and not actually on the coast. It's probably a coastal thing. I don't know. I have yet to really get used to it. Please send prayers and any advice to get through gloomy weather and lots of clouds. But we will make our own sunshine. Wow, as I hit my microphone. In whatever way we can, I suppose. And that's A-okay. Maybe I'm also just way used to Phoenix weather from the last few years where there's no clouds ever. It's just always sun and then it's too hot and that makes you want to die. But there is that. Alex says that I need to move somewhere. I need to start putting the chats on the screen so you guys can start seeing each other talk. But this is where Alex just said I need to move. Oh, I moved it too much. Hang on, Alex. Hang on. Alex says I need to move to South Carolina, which is maybe the greatest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen South Carolina look like a corgi until right now, Alex. That's absolutely fantastic. What are the cities? Corgiston, Corgi Beach, Corgiumbia, Corgden. All right, maybe South Carolina is, in fact, my next destination of somewhere to live. Incredible, Alex. Well done. And I am going to start putting our chat on the screen, but I have to find a good way to like populate it into one spot because we are live across platforms all the time, every day, as you guys know. So right now we are live on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook, on Getter, and of course to our locals family, including the man, the myth, the legend of GIFs, especially himself, Alex, who shared that gem of Corgalino with us. Incredible. I'm so glad all of you guys are here and part of our growing community. As we get started in the stream today, do me a huge favor and stop everything. Pay attention to me right now, really quick, and hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching on right now. It makes such a huge difference to me as an independent creator. And while our short form video platforms are growing like freaking crazy gangbusters right now, I have no idea how that is happening on Instagram and TikTok. It does take much longer and it's much harder to grow on platforms like YouTube and Rumble and Getter and all of the above. So do me a favor, hit that follow or subscribe button. It will always be free to watch these streams, but I am just one girl doing this in the spare bedroom of her apartment, and every single subscribe and follow button really does make the entire difference to me continuing to be able to do this as my job and continuing to be able to foster these conversations with all of you guys that are so, so important and countering the very broken culture that we are living through today in America. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, by the way, a very broken culture and something that I continue to see go off the rails and become a little bit crazier every single day with each passing day, taking stock in where we are today in July of 2023, but where we can correct the ship and put things back on a right path, no pun intended, I suppose, moving forward in the 2020s and beyond that as Gen Z continues to come into adulthood. So it's going to be a really interesting stream. I want all of your thoughts and your opinions in the chat. throughout the stream. And of course, if you guys aren't already introducing yourself in the chat, you should be. We're going to say hi to some people real quick. Evan is watching and so graciously donated already in our YouTube super chat, as did Jake watching in Australia. It's basically like time traveling, isn't it, Jake? When you watch from Australia or New Zealand and it's Tuesday here and it's Wednesday there, blows my mind. So very cool. How is it tomorrow? I would really like to know. Is it sunnier tomorrow? Because I could love to do the sun. That's all I'm going to say about that. Frostfang is here. Mike says shalom from Israel. Hello, Mike. Shalom to you as well, and thank you for being here. We've got Darth watching. Red Scorpion is here on YouTube. Abby says, finally made it for the live. Abby, I'm so glad that you are here. Thank you for being here. Fredster tells me this is the whole East Coast. Much love from Massachusetts, where the weather is exactly the same, minus the hurricanes. Well, I guess I'll just have to settle in for a little while, I suppose. Brenda is watching. Josh is here. We've got Dutch Canadian watching, and you also donated in our super chat already, Dutch Canadian. Thank you so much. And Randy is watching in Louisiana. Uncle Pudge says, yo, what up, Isabel, over on Rumble. And we've got a whole gang watching over there. Don't forget to use the chat Rumble. Getter is out in full force. Nitty Witty is here. Heinz is watching in Germany. Reality Stuff is watching in North California. We've got Grace watching. Hello, I'm so glad you're here, Grace. Scrolling down to get everybody. I want to make sure. Fred is watching from Alabama. My fiance is from Alabama. He says, move to Alabama. You never know what the weather will be. It was like that growing up in Colorado as well. The World is a Zoo is watching. Did you hear about the crazy ad about birth control from a progressive group? No, but should we look it up on the stream in real time? Can you tell me the group that did the ad? We'll add it to the agenda. No pun intended. Ad. God, I'm funny. We'll add it to the lineup for the stream if you can tell me which group put out a crazy ad. And of course, the Locals gang with their Corgi Nation memes coming in all the time. Johnny's here, AJ's here, Daniel Maynard is here, Alex is watching. We've got Crazy Cat Lady and African Warlord and Tito. Good to see you, Tito. And Optimistic Living, the whole gang. You guys are the absolute greatest. Adore you guys. What I don't adore so much is the nation of our culture and the state of the union of where we are at right now, with how we are perpetrating just the absolute upside down every single day. And it just continues to get crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier. And I feel like we have no shortage of opportunities to talk about each one of those individual crazy things on the stream. We have for months now, since we started streaming in September. Absolutely crazy to me, by the way, that we've almost been streaming for an entire year. Like, I blinked and all of a sudden that happened. So wild, absolutely insane. But we'll come back to that another time, and we'll do something very special for our year anniversary in September of streaming. While we talk about these individual crazy stories all the time, I think sometimes it's really important to zoom out to like the 30,000 foot level and just take stock in a state of affairs of where we are at, sort of like a state of the union, but not just in America, in Western civilization, as we live in this clown world. As Josh just said in our YouTube chat, it truly is a clown world. And the more we continue allowing lies to replace truth, the more we continue to allow evil to replace morality and goodness, the more we continue to allow the upside down to replace normalcy and the right side up. I think it's really telling when you look at the statistics of loneliness, of depression, of anxiety, of suicide. When you start unpacking the reason for falling marriage rates or the reason that my generation isn't dating, and when you can pick these things apart bit by bit by bit, knowing the individual crazy stories that we often unpack here on the stream, I think it's never been more apparent to me, at least, but pretty much to everybody, that something is not working. Something is inherently broken with how we do modern society, and something desperately needs to change. It does. If we are serious about having a thriving society at all moving forward in the United States of America or in Western culture at all. And I thought about this topic for the stream earlier this morning when I was recording a video for my Instagram account and for my TikTok account about loneliness, because a few weeks ago I came across an article with this big press release from the Surgeon General's office. If you are not from America and you don't know who the Surgeon General is, he's kind of like the official doctor for all of the United States of America. They are the doctor to the president, but they basically are like the top physician in the United States. And there was a big study that the Surgeon General's office shared a few weeks ago about how loneliness is, by all definitions, becoming an epidemic in the United States of America today. And the more we continue isolating ourselves and the more lonely we are becoming, that's actually manifesting as a physical trauma response in our bodies. It's not just an emotional problem or a mental problem or a spiritual problem. It's actually as dangerous for your body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day to be dealing with chronic loneliness. And as I started reading this story and thinking at that 30,000 foot level of all of these big picture issues that are working in tandem to completely turn our society and our reality upside down, I've started to realize that just pretty much across the board, we need a hard reset as a country. We need a start over, go back to square one, do not pass go, just go there. On the Monopoly board to square one, a fresh start, a new chapter, a new journey as my generation continues to come into adulthood. Because if we continue to go down this path, I highly doubt our society will even be able to exist at some point, let alone thrive. And certainly will just continue to go further and further and further into this pandemonium of insanity that I don't know how we can fully recover from. And you guys know all the stuff that we talk about on the stream. You know how crazy things get with each passing day. Men have become women and women have become men. You're a better person if you say that Sound of Freedom, the movie, was somehow a conspiracy theory than if you were encouraging people to see the movie because you want to stop child sex trafficking. The California government just said, nah, we don't really care about prosecuting those people. And that made them good people somehow. Our own government refuses to investigate drugs in the White House. Like, things have just become insane to the point that I feel like we are living through The Matrix or Blade Runner or any other crazy movie, Ready Player One, with every passing day. We talked about that a lot yesterday as it pertained to some of the crazy grow babies in the lab conversations that we were having. But zooming all the way out, we have continued to allow lies to become truth and goodness to become replaced by evil in society, to the point that if we do not stop now, and if we do not right the ship and bring truth back into a world rejecting the very premise of objective truth, I don't know that we'll have the opportunity to moving forward. I genuinely believe that this decade of the 2020s is kind of our last shot. Our last shot of saving Western civilization, our last shot of bringing truth back to a truthless world, our last shot to give those generations that are going to come after us a better chance of success and escaping this weird matrix that we are living through. And we have this opportunity and obligation, frankly, to ourselves and those who come after us. But I think people haven't quite realized how bad it truly is. Innately, we know, we have this gut feeling, something's not passing the smell test. Something is not adding up right. And all of these crazy things continue to happen. But society at large is still probably okay if we keep living this way. Everything's fine. It's not fine. In fact, everything in society is pretty much the opposite of fine. And we're going to be unpacking statistically what that looks like from a lens within the United States of America. But as we unpack these crazy and sad statistics and stories, I want you to know there is not a reason to throw in the towel. There is no reason to have anything but hope as we move forward with Generation Z growing up into adulthood, because Gen Z as a generation, my generation, 26 years old and under to about 12, is already waking up, is already fighting back, is already rebelling against this very broken culture to embrace good and true and beautiful things. And the more this culture is pushed upon us and shoved down our throats, the more we want to stand up and fight back against it. So we'll end the stream by talking about how we can facilitate more Gen Zers continuing to take on the driver's seat of righting the ship and driving our car back into the lane of normalcy and reality moving forward. And I know that there's a lot of people who have insane misconceptions about my generation, probably because you saw a video from TikTok on Fox News, or you listened to a boomer podcast host tell you that all of Gen Z is ruining America and ruining Western civilization. I challenge you, I really challenge you throughout this conversation that we are about to have today to put your own preconceived notions about this next generation aside and just be willing to open your mind a little bit. to listen more than you speak and to understand where Generation Z has a unique role and responsibility to play as we continue going into the 2020s, because I genuinely believe we as a generation will probably be the only group of people that even has the opportunity to bring us back to a sense of reality and normalcy. If we don't have that opportunity, nobody else will. And it's never been more important to empower and encourage and inspire and uplift teenagers and young adults in America today, rather than put us down and point the finger at us and blame us for the very broken culture that we are living through. So without further ado, I think we should just jump right in, and I can share some of these statistics with you. Again, this was really, really sad, but it all kind of started when I saw this report from the Surgeon General's office that was put out a few weeks ago, and this was released on May 3rd, so it's been a little over 2 months now since the Surgeon General released this, but there was an advisory alarm that was raised a few months ago about the devastating impact of and they're calling it an epidemic of loneliness and isolation in the United States. And as we dive into some of the statistics here, I have to just point out, I find it so incredibly ironic that we live in perhaps arguably the most connected time ever in human history. At the touch of a single button on a single device, you can meet and talk to 99% of human beings on the face of the planet instantaneously. You can learn pretty much everything about their life. You can FaceTime someone on the other side of the planet instantaneously and have this sense of connection to everyone. So much for the 6 degrees of separation or 6 degrees of removal, wherever that statistic came from, that you and every other person on the planet only have 6 degrees of separation. It's really only like 1 degree of separation now, and that degree is whether or not you have the device that's able to connect you to every single other human being on the face of the planet. And yet, even living in this incredibly connected, unprecedentedly connected time in human history, we also are the most isolated. We are also the most lonely. We spend most of our time alone, even though we do feel like we're constantly surrounded by other people and we're constantly updated in what's going on in everybody else's life. We've really boiled down our connections to each other to be through a screen rather than a genuine connection that is happening in person. That's something tangible that we can experience. And I don't think that irony exists on coincidental basis. I think that irony was really intentional by so many people. And I say all the time, social media and the internet and technology and our phones and all of the above are just tools at the end of the day, right? They can be used for really, really good, or they can be used for really, really bad. And ultimately, our obligation is to figure out how to navigate these tools responsibly so that we can help everybody, so that we can have an altruistic outcome for this rather than the devastating reality for what we're living through right now. Mike, thank you so much for your donation in our chat. I really appreciate it so very much. So the Surgeon General comes out and says that we are actually living through an epidemic, like a disease epidemic that's spreading very quickly, of loneliness and isolation in the United States. And I actually didn't know this from a statistical perspective, but when you're talking about an epidemic of loneliness, you're not just talking about an emotional response, a mental health response, a spiritual health response. You're actually talking about specific damage to your physical health as well, which actually, I suppose, makes a lot of sense. Your mentality, your mental state really does determine so much of your physical outcomes in life. It determines how well you take care of yourself, your mental fortitude to get through really challenging situations from a medical perspective, and so many other things. But just on the pure statistical basis, the Surgeon General's office tells us that the physical health consequences of poor or insufficient connections with other people include a 29% increased risk of heart disease, a 32% increased risk of stroke, and a 50% increased risk of developing dementia for older adults. Additionally, lacking social connection increases risk of premature death by more than 60%. So if you are chronically lonely, if you are chronically alone and isolated and kept separate from the people that you are supposed to have a deep, intimate connection with, you actually are 60% more likely to die early. Whether or not you ever even have a serious disease, whether or not you ever struggle with cancer, if you have chronic illness, None of that is even taken into account here. Literally just lack of social connection increases your risk of premature death by more than 60%. And I'm not surprised by this statistic that we are living through extremely high and growing rates of loneliness in America at all. I see it. I experience it every day. I work from home. I get to talk to you guys all the time, which is fantastic. But really, my day is on a screen all the time. And I am a little lonely sometimes. Luckily, I have my corgi sidekick, Libby, who keeps me very sane and happy. And my fiance and I get to see each other every single day, which is incredible. But genuinely, I spend 80 to 90% of my time alone right now, even though I am unbelievably connected to everybody else. And the same can be said for the vast majority of my generation, especially in a post-COVID reality and a post-COVID society where our school has started to take place through a screen. Our jobs have started to take place through a screen and continued to take place through a screen. Our dating experiences are happening far more often through a dating app or through our phones and digitally than they ever do in person. We've replaced physical intimacy with watching pornography, because why would we have to bother leaving our house when we can have a similar result? We trick ourselves into thinking it's a similar result at home, alone. It takes far less vulnerability and far less effort and work to go meet someone if we can just have those experiences ourselves. We know that mental health and the mental health crisis that is happening in Generation Z right now has made depression, anxiety, and even suicide far more normal than it ever has been in all of human history. That Gen Z across the world, not just in America, is experiencing some of, if not the highest rates of clinical depression, of severe anxiety, of substance abuse, and even of suicide. And the CDC just told us a few months ago that in 2021, 1 in 3 teenage girls genuinely contemplated taking her own life. 1 in 3, a third of us. A slightly lower statistic actually attempted to take her own life, and many were successful, unfortunately, becoming more and more common in a post-COVID world. But I don't even think this is limited to loneliness or the mental health crisis or suicide or anxiety or depression. I started thinking about this at the 30,000 foot level. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because I want us to picture this like we're riding in a plane and we're looking down at everything that we can possibly see in every direction. I started thinking about this at the 30,000 foot level, and everything that we've said was good for our generation has actually ended up being really bad. We've told our generation, you're perfect just the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are. You should never expect to grow or change or struggle or have a challenge in any capacity. We were helicopter parented on top of all of that. So of course it makes sense that when we face struggle and adversity, we're going to experience some pretty severe anxiety because of that. We've been isolated for most of our teenage and young adult years in a post-COVID world without any sense of real, tangible, touching connection with other people. So of course we're lonely and we're isolated and we feel like we don't fit in with our peers. We don't even see our peers to begin with. We've told Generation Z that dating and expecting somebody to pick you up and buy you dinner and open the car door for you and pursue you for a long period of time, that's antiquated and wrong and no longer welcome. It's outdated in today's society. So instead, you should just match with people on the internet and chat with them as long as you can, but don't ever commit to somebody because long-term commitment is really, really bad. So of course we're not dating. And of course we've replaced actual romantic intimacy with something that we can get through a screen. We have no life experience upon which to build a healthy relationship with someone moving forward. We've told our generation, exercise? Yeah, nah, you don't really need that. So of course our mental health is struggling with a complete lack of endorphins, and our physical health is struggling even more so with obesity becoming the norm for the body positivity movement, telling us obesity is not just normal, it's beautiful for women and something that should be celebrated and normalized to every degree possible in society. We've literally normalized, I hate that word because the radical left has really taken it and run with it to create all kinds of crazy upside down scenarios in society, but we've normalized everything that's bad for you And we've attacked everything that's good for you to the point that everything is upside down, unrecognizable, and we have no idea where to move forward. And I'm not just saying that to be hyperbolic. I'm not just saying that to make a point or to try to prove you that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. All of these statements that I just made are backed up statistically and by massive amounts of research and data. Childhood obesity has been on the rise in Generation Z for decades, and Bingham Memorial Hospital tells us that Generation Z, children born in the mid-2000s, are facing the dangers of obesity at an alarming rate. They published this in 2017, and we know that across the board, every generation and age demographic post-COVID has gained substantial amounts of weight and is exercising less. So this is even very, very antiquated and outdated data. Don't listen to me on these. It's probably much, much worse when it comes to the statistics, but I had to share this with you because I found it alarming. This came from 2017. The percentage of obese children in the United States, aged 6 to 11, those people are all teenagers and young adults now, increased from 7% in 1980 to 18% in 2012, according to the CDC. And during the same time period, the percentage of obese teenagers, also those people who are now young adults and in their 20s, aged 12 to 19, increased from 5% to 21%. Time magazine tells us most Americans aren't getting enough exercise. Americans are not exercising enough, they published. Less than 1/3 of U.S. adults meet suggested benchmarks for aerobic and muscle building activities set out by health officials. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services recommends that healthy adults spend at least 150 minutes per week or 20 minutes a day doing moderate intensity aerobic exercise and at least 2 days per week doing muscle strengthening activities. But only 28% of people in the US are actually following those guidelines. 28%. That's it. Moving over to our love lives, Gen Z is not dating. We've deleted our dating apps. We've deleted our intentions for marriage out of our minds, hearts, and souls. And we're not even hooking up with one another. We're rejecting hookup culture because we are looking around at how miserable everyone is and the new normal that we've established in society and realizing it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to date anybody. It's not worth it to fall in love if there's never going to be an intention of commitment or marriage or long-term partnership with that person because we've attacked that. We've gotten rid of that from society while we've normalized everything else. And I found this so interesting that a recent survey confirmed that 59% of Gen Zers aged 18 to 24 said that they prefer meeting in real life, and 68% of us have failed to find love on dating apps in a time where dating apps have become the norm. And we say it's too hard to meet people in real life. Marriage rates have absolutely plummeted across the board in the United States of America, declining in a decade from 2011 to 2021 by a massive, massive rate. In 2011, the rate was 16.3 per 1,000 women, and by 2021, it was 14.9. Interestingly, because marriage rates are dropping massively, divorce rates are also starting to drop because nobody's getting married to get divorced in the first place, which I found kind of interesting. And if I needed another reason to move to Alaska, I guess it was this. Alaska has the highest marriage rate in the country with 23.5 marriages per 1,000 women when the national average in 2021 was only 14.9. So Alaska, you're doing something right up there. We absolutely love to see that. And of course, as we've replaced reality through everything with our screens, one of the biggest areas where that's been impacted is in intimacy experiences, particularly for young Americans, and that's because of the rise of the pornography industry. When I talk about the pornography industry on social media and on the stream, I don't think people understand like the big picture level, and so I thought this was a fascinating bullet point list of just everything you would need to know in the very quickest way possible. That every second, almost 30,000 people are watching pornography on the internet. Every second of every day, almost $3,100 is being spent on pornography on the internet, and every second, almost 400 people are typing the word adult into a search engine. On a daily basis, 37 pornographic videos are created in the United States. 2.5 billion emails containing porn are sent or received every day. 68 million searches on the internet, Google searches, are related to pornography. 25% of all internet searches every single day are about pornography, and 116,000 inquiries related to child pornography are received every single day. Zooming into America specifically, 200,000 people in the United States today are classified as porn addicts, meaning their brain has developed an addiction to watching pornography, probably as a replacement for physical intimacy, which is not even remotely normal in our society today. 40 million Americans regularly visit porn sites. And if you know anything about our population, that's only about 350 million people. So do the math yourself. 35% of all internet downloads are related to pornography. 34% of internet users have experienced unwanted exposure to pornographic content through ads, pop-ups, blah, 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 blah. Twitter, if you know anything about how bad porn is over there. And 1/3 of porn viewers in the United States are women. Of course, we know that it hinders sexual development. It raises the risk of depression. It completely changes the brain chemistry of your brain to not be able to have a successful, intimate experience physically with someone. And perhaps because of the rise of the pornography industry, everybody is shocked by this, but I am not, that American high school students are having a massive decline in rates of sexual activity. And this isn't for a good reason, okay? This isn't because abstinence education is suddenly working or we're changing culture to let people want to wait until they get married. That's not really what's happening here. But the CDC tells us that 30% of teenagers in America in 2021 said that they ever had sex, which was down from 38 in 2019 and a massive drop from 3 decades ago when more than 50% of teenagers were reporting to have sex. Of course, it's because why would you go meet someone in person if everything is happening through a screen and in an artificial reality? We've replaced fitness with obesity. We've replaced health with just following whatever big pharma wants to tell you and saying, you're perfect just the way you are. Just pour a bubble bath and everything's fine. We've replaced actual mental health with complete lunacy and affirmative care, just affirming where anybody is at instead of helping them get better and come out of a negative situation to be actually healthy later on down the line. We've replaced dating in person with dating apps and hookup culture that even itself is not enough to satisfy what we really want in our hearts, because Gen Z is deleting our dating apps and just choosing not to date whatsoever. We've replaced sex with pornography 100%. That is not even remotely in question in modern day America. We've replaced education with indoctrination. We've replaced everything with the upside down. I could keep going, example by example by example by example. But ultimately, where this really boils down to is in society across the board, be it the food that we eat or the clothes that we wear or the people we interact with or where we get our news or the education that we receive or what our job looks like, we have replaced truth with lies. We've replaced truth with lies. We have allowed evil to become the new morality. And we've allowed our normal sense of what we know to be real versus what we know to be false to be completely inverted and turned into the upside down. I say it all the time, and I love Stranger Things, and sadly it's being impacted by this writer's strike, which I don't know very much about. I'm going to have to look into that later on, but I've been way too busy studying other things to know much about it, so I doubt we're going to get season 5 by 2025, which is very, very sad. But I love Stranger Things, and I like to say all the time, we live in the upside down. We look around at the current reality we're living in, and it feels kind of similar. It feels recognizable. I think especially for Generation Z who are growing up, and especially those of us in our 20s, we listen to stories from our parents about what their 20s were like, and we feel like maybe there's something familiar there in those stories, but nothing is quite fitting into the puzzle pieces. It's just slightly not exactly what we're supposed to be expecting, right? And I think we're looking for this sense of a foundation again. We as a generation are looking for something that feels familiar, even though we have no idea what we're looking for. We are nostalgic for a time that we weren't even around for, that we weren't even a forethought in someone's brain to exist. And I think that's why we go back and we binge watch movies and TV shows and hear stories from our parents from the 1990s, because it was a time that we are nostalgic for, where things felt reliable. They felt solid. They felt like we could understand truth versus lies, that you could put aside your political or religious differences to find the humanity in one another, that we all had a lot more in common than what was keeping us apart, where you could find joy in average everyday life. You felt like you were making a difference at your job, or that you were obtaining a quality education. You felt like you could fall in love with someone and meet them and build a life with them over time. And we want those things because we don't have them. We don't have them in modern society at all. Fascinating how 30 years, 40 years of difference can completely change the entire nature of society. Even though it might look at first glance to be the same, it might appear to be familiar, it might appear to be the same thing that many of you or your parents or your grandparents lived through, but there's something dramatic missing. And I think that something missing is, at the most basic level, objective truth, rather than my truth being your truth and your truth and your truth, and everything is subjective at the end of the day. AJ, thank you so much for your tip in our locals chat. You said suffering from porn addiction is very bad and really sucks, and it is hard to quit. It absolutely does suck, and it is really bad, and it is hard to quit because it is a legitimate addiction, and I know it's incredibly normal for people to be dealing with that right now. So if you guys are people dealing with that right now, there are tons of resources out there for you. My amazing friend Josh Broom, who used to be an adult film actor, is actually a pastor now and helps walk young people through quitting pornography addiction. He does a really phenomenal job. Fight the New Drug is a phenomenal organization that's helping people see how this is really impacting your brain from an addiction standpoint and how it's really ruining society at the larger level. So check them out if you haven't already. There's lots of resources out there. And the same can be said for everything else that we're talking about. But we as a generation are done. We're done. We're done being told that obesity is health. We're done being told that mental health just means pouring yourself a glass of rosé and getting in a bubble bath and being okay with being depressed, and then taking 5 drugs prescribed to us from Big Pharma that are supposed to cure our depression and cure our anxiety, but really just affirm our depression and our anxiety. We're done being told that the best possible way we can experience love is hooking up with as many people as humanly possible, to never have true emotional fulfillment, to degrade the values of our bodies and our intimate experiences, and to never expect to have a long-term commitment from the people that we want to find emotional connection with. We're done. We're deleting our dating apps as proof of that. We are done being told that the only way to be successful in society is to get a degree in underwater lesbian basket weaving from a 4-year elite university, where we can expect to be $250,000 in debt by the time we are 22 years old, that we will never be able to crawl out of, by the way, in case you're not paying attention to the economy, let alone afford a house or afford to have children or any of the above. So we're not going to 4-year universities at the same rate. We're choosing trade school or entrepreneurship. 62% of our generation is already starting our own businesses or is in the process of starting our own businesses. We're done being told by our favorite talking head on television or our favorite newspaper, spoiler alert, we don't have either of those things, what the news of the day is, because we know that it's not reality. We know that it's being paid off by someone who wants us to believe an agenda and wants us to buy into a narrative rather than objective truth. So we're following independent creators on social media and getting better information about how we can change the world in a more positive way and where we are at today for where we can go tomorrow. We are done being told that this has to be our reality, that we are stuck in this and it's just the way that it is and there's nothing that we can do about it. And I want to challenge you. I really want to challenge you in your assumptions about Generation Z, because I think there is no reason to have anything but hope for us as a generation, steering the ship back into the lane of reality and bringing us back to a sense of that familiar nostalgia that we all seem to be longing for a time that we don't even remember, amazingly. Maybe it is a little bit of romanticizing TV shows and movies and the stories from our parents and our grandparents. But if romanticizing a time where things felt safe and stable and had a solid foundation and gave you hope for the future is a bad thing, then I certainly don't know what to do anymore. Like, take me off the planet if that is a bad thing. I would rather romanticize that than romanticize the absolute bullshit dumpster fire that we are living through every single day, more and more with each passing day. And so I want to share with you a little bit of information as we round out the stream today about what Generation Z is doing to change the face of American culture, because you might not be aware of all of these things. You might not have your mind opened to it yet, but don't believe everything that you hear on Fox News about young Americans, about teenagers and young adults. Don't believe everything you hear from your favorite radio show host about young people in this country, because truthfully, if we are to dig ourselves out of the hole of the dumpster fire that we call everyday life in Western civilization today, I really do believe it has to come from us. It has to come from those of us in Generation Z. I find no coincidence that our generation is at the end of the alphabet, because I hope and pray that we are also at the end of life as we know it. If life as we know it is eating lab-grown meat or Beyond Burgers instead of actual nutrition because that's healthier for you, or eating bowls full of Lucky Charms marshmallows instead of a steak because that's healthier for you, I'm totally fine letting go of life as we know it. If life as we know it is 1 in 5 members of my generation identifying as LGBTQ+ because our teachers and our favorite celebrities and the adults in our life are telling us that's the only way to be truly progressive, I'm totally fine with the end of life as we know it. If the end of life as we know it means getting rid of the evils of abortion or child trafficking or pornography, I'm totally fine with the end of life as we know it. And I think we've looked at this like, Gen Z is changing everything, Gen Z is ruining America, as a really bad thing. But I want to challenge you. What if Gen Z changing how we live our everyday lives is actually a net positive for humanity? What if young people looking around at how we live life, seeing that everyone is miserable, everyone is unhealthy, everyone is diabetic, everyone is suicidal, everyone is lonely, everyone is single, and realizing we want nothing to do with that is a really positive thing? What if the end of life as we know it means a return to tradition? Because we've departed from tradition substantially, entirely. Maybe there's something to the end of life as we know it and the end of the alphabet. And Gen Z is already starting to prove that with every single passing day. As I've already mentioned a few times, we are deleting our dating apps. We are rejecting hookup culture. We are having less rates of premarital and teenage sex, maybe for the wrong reasons, but perhaps it is a good starting point to talk to our generation and say, yeah, the reason that you're not doing that is because you're looking for something more, and over here is where you can find it. We are interested in getting married earlier and pursuing marriage at higher rates as a generation, which I'm incredibly excited for as someone who is engaged and preparing for marriage myself. And I hear incredible stories of young men and women who are my peers or even younger than me, so deeply invested in finding a lasting relationship and love in one another. And all of my friends who have gotten married young being under 27, are all having kids, a lot of them very, very early in life, and are so excited to be parents in a society that is telling them to reject parenthood with everything that they have. We have cut cable, we have turned off television, we are done believing in media narratives and instead are seeking truth for ourselves. And if we can't find it anywhere, we're sharing it with other people in any way that we can, in TikTok videos in the passenger seat of our car or in our dorm rooms or live streams like this one or anywhere in between, knowing that we can't rely on an expert to tell us what's really going on in society. We have to go find those things and find objective truth for ourselves. We are enrolling in four-year universities at substantially lower rates and instead pursuing trade school or entrepreneurship at exceptionally increasing rates with each passing year. We want to get off the grid and pursue homesteading, which Emily just reminded us of in the YouTube chat. Can we talk about how homesteading and intentional living is making a huge comeback? The number of Gen Zers that I see who buy crazy, rundown, falling apart cabins in the middle of nowhere, fix them up, and start raising animals and growing their own food and sharing that with their family. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many of those accounts I follow on social media, because we want this return to something familiar in society. With Generation Z in faith, Gen Z, fascinatingly, is the number one generation to prefer the traditional Latin Mass if they are Catholic. And every day I hear stories of Gen Z Christians converting to Catholicism, probably because we are Protestant Christians, I should say, converting to Catholic Christianity, because we are craving this sense of tradition with a capital T. We are longing for something that feels familiar. We are longing for something that has stood the test of time rather than continues to evolve with the times to keep up with the constantly changing demands of modern society. We are choosing to pursue preventative health in any way that we can. We're exercising at higher rates with what I see on social media. Sorry, there's a big siren outside. If you guys can hear that, it might be a little bit loud. But we are doing the best that we possibly can to reject, in every sense of the word, everything about how we conduct ourselves in modern society, which I suppose isn't a new idea either. That in and of itself is traditional. If you think about it, what is every teenager and young adult really passionate about at the end of the day? Rejecting their parents, right? If any of you are parents of teenagers or you are a teenager yourself, the last thing that you ever want to do is accept the advice of your parents or your teachers or your professors or your grandparents and aunts and uncles. They never know what you're going through, right? They were never kids. They just don't get it. You just don't understand me, Mom. God, I was such a bratty teenager. Sorry, Mom, if you're watching. But the easiest way to reject culture, to be a little punk rock, to be rebellious and countercultural, is to overcorrect and go the opposite way. And today, the only way to really live a countercultural lifestyle is to fall in love, actually, for real, and get married and have a bunch of kids instead of hooking up with as many people as you can imagine. The best way to be countercultural is to pursue true education rather than indoctrination, simply out of curiosity and wanting to learn and hungering for an intellectual stimulus that doesn't exist in modern American education. The best way to be countercultural is to stop buying over-processed garbage food or toxic skincare or cleaning chemicals and figuring out how you're poisoning yourself, instead pursuing real healthy eating, making real food and learning how to take care of yourself, or cutting toxins from your makeup and your skincare so that you can stop worrying about giving yourself cancer over long periods of time and escape the cycle that's propagated by Big Pharma and the FDA every single day. The best way to be countercultural is to worship God in the fullest extent possible, with the most intimate experience possible, going back to tradition with a capital T, in a world that's telling you worshiping God is just singing modern songs that have pretty much nothing to do with a biblical foundation, or that it's even more important to worship government or yourself rather than God, to find real faith. The best way to be countercultural is to stop buying into all of the lies that men can become women and women can become men, that children shouldn't have an age of consent because we are just welcoming any label and any alphabet letter into the alphabet mafia and the pride flag with every passing day. Everything continues to get crazier, but we can continue to pursue truth. The easiest way to be fighting back against this stuff is to start asking questions. And we as a generation are committed to doing that. We are easily, statistically, the most independent politically generation we've seen in a very long time, with 52% of registered voters in Gen Z choosing to be independent, not a Republican, not a Democrat, but not somebody that is just going to blindly follow everybody that came before them, somebody that needs to be won over and proven that your ideas are going to make sense and work rather than blind allegiance to a party. We are quite literally blazing our own trail, and it's kind of like the Wild West in some ways, which I love because I grew up in the mountains in Colorado and was always kind of instilled with this blaze your own trail spirit. that I love that my generation is embracing wherever they came from, right? There's a sense of uncharted territory as we continue to push through the 2020s with where we live in the world right now, what reality looks like, what our relationships look like, and what opportunities lay out in front of us. And collectively, whether we agree on the minutia of political policies, which I think we get too caught up in the weeds in sometimes, whether or not we agree on those things, collectively as a generation, we're saying this is broken, it doesn't work, and it's time to do something different. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people in my generation that have all the wrong ideas for what something different is supposed to look like. But it's not the norm. And I think we get so conflated in Gen Z is changing everything. They're ruining everything. They're taking a departure from where we're at. But what if a departure from where we're at is actually exactly what we need? What if Gen Z wanting to be different isn't an entire generation of crazy social justice warrior progressive activists, but smart, passionate, curious, and faithful individuals that are longing in our entire soul for something more than the very broken, lonely, depressed, anxious, unhealthy reality that we live through every single day. It is time to bring society back to objective truth. It is time to bring love back to commitment and back to marriage. It's time to bring service to our community back to the individual level, to take care of each other, to care about the humanity in one another, to fight for each other, instead of continuing to isolate ourselves farther and farther and farther and farther apart in the name of technology, in the name of progress, in the name of isolation. I don't even think we have a good reason for why we do the vast majority of the things we do in 2023 America. I think we've just taken on a viewership role, an audience role in culture rather than an active participatory role, to the point that if we continue down that trajectory, we are going to be so unhealthy, so lonely, so depressed, so anxious, so without faith that I don't know if we will be able to crawl ourselves out of that hole. I said it a little while ago, but I do truly believe that the 2020s as a decade are kind of our last shot. It's time for a hard reset. It really is. We are at the edge of the cliff and we're having to make a decision for what comes next. And there is only one generation that across the board, collectively, is looking around and realizing a lot is really wrong here. And we want to go in a different direction. We might not know what that direction looks like yet, but a different direction. And I'm really tired of people attacking our generation for saying that, because we're not destroying the foundation of what is good. We're yearning for the foundation of what is good. We're not destroying freedom and liberty. We want to reinstitute actual freedom and liberty rather than living through the insanity and, frankly, authoritarianism that we live through today. We're not destroying Western civilization. We're fighting like hell to keep Western civilization with faith and education and the arts and morality alive in a civilization that's trying to destroy all of those things. And I think most importantly, we are realizing that while we do have faith, our generation can change the world. For a different project that I was working on writing, just a little hint drop there, I read a statistic that said 75% of Gen Z actually believes our generation can and will change the world, which is overwhelmingly powerful in a very positive way. I think we're realizing we can change the world, but we can't save or fix the world. God can. And we desperately need a return to a relationship and communion with Him and a unification of the body of Christ on earth if we're serious about making truth the forefront of our society again. Tito, thank you so much for your donation in our super chat. I love you guys so much. You are the best. What can we do in empowering Generation Z to do that? It's a really simple answer. If you're not a Gen Zer yourself, I want you to challenge yourself in different areas of your life to step out of the way and let a younger person just try. Try to write a curriculum module. for themselves, right? If they're being homeschooled, or try to tell you what they want to do with their higher education path, even if it's not pursuing a 4-year degree at a crazy liberal university. Maybe have your Gen Zer in your life tell you what they think the priorities of society should be for the next several decades. Maybe it's time for more young people to be determining the future of entertainment and media and news, which I'm so glad social media has given us the capacity to do in a more decentralized area of information as we continue to get more and more on these and less on TV. Like I said, it's a tool that can be used for really good or really bad. Encourage the young people in your life to have real in-person connection with one another, not sitting there chatting with each other over a live stream, not sitting there texting one another, not FaceTime, actual in-person hangouts with their friends, their boyfriend and girlfriend, anybody that they possibly can. We desperately need this next generation that is rooted in truth to stand up and fight for everyone that is going to come after us. And it's not a new idea for that to happen, by the way. This has been happening for a very long period of time, well before America even was a country. We have always relied on the voices of young countercultural truth seekers, people who wanted something more than what they had at their time, because they wanted to give that to people who came after them, even before we were the United States of America. And I want to leave you with just a fun little trivia piece, because I don't think we've talked about it on the stream for a very long time, at least several months. But Generation Z is so special and so unique at the end of the alphabet, because I think we really mirror our founding fathers in so many capacities. I love to ask this question to high schoolers and college students when I go speak to my peers in my generation in their educational environments, but I ask them to describe what the founding fathers looked like. On July 4th, 1776, I ask what document was signed, and a lot of people say the Constitution, which gives me so much faith and hope in the American education system. But no, it's not the Constitution. It was the Declaration of Independence, which also inspired other democracies and free societies, Democratic Republic in America, but other democracies and free societies to take shape and take hold in Western civilization later on down the line. It was the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. And I think the illustrations in our APUSH textbooks, our history textbooks, or the statues that we see in Washington, D.C., or the paintings that we see on social media and in the hallways of art museums and everywhere else, take a really interesting approach to what we expect the founding fathers are supposed to look like. And the answer is always, when I ask my peers and people a little bit younger than me, old white men across the board. We genuinely think that the founding fathers were these ancient, geriatric, completely out of touch, couldn't possibly understand pop culture of their time, old dinosaurs, right? That's what we believe. And not that there's anything wrong with being an elderly white man. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But we've attacked that as a vice of American history for so long, saying that because these people were so old, because they couldn't possibly understand what every next generation would go through, because they were out of touch themselves, and ancient, wrinkly, sagging at the seams white people, they had no realm of understanding what freedom and goodness and morality was supposed to look like. But in reality, on July 4th, 1776, the average age of the founding fathers was like 40 years old. The vast majority of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence and who fought for our freedom and who later took hold as our first presidents, as the great thinkers of our country, as the authors of the Federalist Papers, the people who shaped the idea of modern Western civilization were 18, 19, 20 years old. Alexander Hamilton was 21 years old on July 4th, 1776. James Monroe was 18 years old. Aaron Burr was 20. John Marshall, I think, was 24 or 25, one of the two. Betsy Ross was 25 years old on July 4th, 1776. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, was 33 years old on July 4th, 1776. I'm 26 right now as the oldest of Generation Z, and I'm still told that I don't have enough life experience, or I'm not eloquent enough, or I have no idea what I'm talking about in order to have a leadership role in shaping the culture of this country moving forward. Heck, those barely older than me tell me as a Gen Zer that I don't have a stake in this country simply because I'm inheriting it, if you know what I'm talking about, from a certain political candidate on their campaign trail. That I don't believe in this country enough. That if I was 1 year younger, I should just now be having the right to vote. And yet, the people who shaped this country and Western civilization in a modern sense in its entirety were 33 years old and younger. Maybe it's time to encourage the next generation, next, compared to them from 1776, with Generation Z to do the exact same thing. To put faith in the young, countercultural, punk rock, truth-seeking, faithful patriots that are looking around at our broken, authoritarian, totalitarian society and wanting something more. Not just from us, for our generation, but for everyone else who's going to come after us. And believe me, Generation Alpha, who's right around the corner, the children of millennials, they desperately need something different. Please start praying for them now because they're going to need it. 1776 was not all that long ago in the grand scheme of world history. It's not. Everybody likes to say, well, young people were smarter back then. Young people had more wisdom back then. Young people have intelligence and wisdom and grit and fortitude and passion just as much today as they did in 1776. You might not be looking for it. You might be watching the video of the average idiot eating Tide Pods on Fox News and thinking that that determines the entire culture of our generation. But I hope that this conversation today at least challenged your baseline notions of what teenagers and young people in this country are truly capable of in bringing us back to a sense of familiarity, to a sense of reality, to something that we can rely on again, a strong foundation of truth, of faith, of goodness in a very, very broken society. Because ultimately, there will come a time where it does fall on us, whether it's voluntarily inspired and empowered and provided to us now, or whether we've gone so far into the deep end that we have to desperately try to crawl ourselves out, and there probably won't be the opportunity to do it anymore. We've got to start fighting. Luckily, Gen Z already is. So, as we leave today, I want you to start asking yourself in your life, how can you, as a Gen Z or yourself, join the fight? Or, if you're not, empower the other young people in your life, your kids, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors, your students, to do the exact same thing. It's time for a change, and it is time for a hard reset, but I have all the faith in the world that we are going to be the generation to fight like hell to save whatever we can out of this crazy experiment called the United States of America and Western civilization as a whole. Veronica, thank you so much for your sweet donation in our YouTube super chat. You guys are so great helping me support my independent content journey, and I appreciate every single donation. It goes towards keeping all of this possible, and you guys are absolutely phenomenal. I love you guys all so very much. I have a couple announcements for you really quick as I'm dropping a link in our chat. First and foremost, you are invited to our post-stream Q&A happening over on Locals in our Locals community, which you are all invited to join right after this. So I just dropped the link. You can jump over there as soon as we are done with the stream to ask some questions and start talking about some really exciting stuff. So please consider joining our Locals community. I just dropped the link. Speaking of Locals, we have a really exciting new episode of our dating series called Outdated, which breaks down modern lies about dating and relationships and replaces those with truth for Gen Z, happening tonight on Locals, specifically zooming in on this topic of why young people are having significantly less rates of sex premaritally and what we can do about it, specifically as it pertains to young men, because it's really interesting. Men are having less sex than ever before in modern society. So we're going to be unpacking that, and it's a very interesting conversation. We would love to have you there. And a new episode of our faith-based series, Domus, is coming on Thursday. It happens every Thursday, and we would love to have you guys tune into that. That all happens exclusively over on Locals, which is kind of like social media for people who hate social media. You guys take on a much more active role. You can post and get to know each other, and it's a lot more intimate than what we normally do with our content and the stream. So please join us over there. Announcement number 2, we will not be having a stream on Friday. I have a doctor's appointment on Friday afternoon, so we will not have a stream on Friday afternoon, but we will be back on Monday and regular streaming tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So no stream on Friday. Take the weekend. It's going to be really fun to just have a day off, right? Go touch grass. If this stream didn't tell you you needed to do it, go take your friend out to lunch and touch grass. And number 3, I'm going to have a lot of exciting announcements for you about something else very, very soon. You guys can learn about it more if you join Locals because I tell you things in advance, but I've been working really hard on something and I'm so excited to share it with you very, very soon. The time is almost here for something that you can help support and bring more awareness to Generation Z as a whole. So stay tuned for all of that. Dutch Canadian, thank you so much for your donation. You are so, so sweet. And I love your cute little gif of the hippo. Adorable. Love it so much. You guys are amazing people. Tell the truth. Keep fighting. Rebel against this crazy broken society. We've never needed it more. And we will see you back for the stream tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Before you go, do me a huge favor and hit that follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. It makes such a huge difference to me as an independent creator. And we will see you over on Locals for our post-stream Q&A. So Locals, don't go anywhere.